Hello, YouTubers. My name is John J. Flores, aka J Flow. Um, for many years, I've been telling people that I'm going to write a book based on my true life testimony. It's called Demons from Devils, Angels from God. Um, it seems like every time I go to writing it, something happens, or the last time I had about 12 chapters written in this book, and unfortunately, my house caught fire and I lost my book. Ever since then, I've been trying to pick up where I left off, and it just seems like anytime I start, something happens or God just adds another chapter in my book. So, needless to say, I haven't got a hard copy anywhere. In fact, many of my stories are put together by a bunch of dates and times, and I can't even fathom how many dates and times there is because I have such a bad memory. Nonetheless, I am here today to do something that has never been done before on YouTube, and that's give my story and my book on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, I would ask you to do the like button and subscribe so that you can hear my story. Now, first of all, I was born in Big Spring, Texas. Born and raised. I had a very loving family. We had a bunch of people living in our home. Most of them were girls. I did have a father figure. His name was Rodolfo Dominguez, and a grandmother by the name of Eva Dominguez. Now, I do have a mother. Her name is Aurora Dominguez. But at the time that I was born, my mom always had to work, so a lot of the times she would leave me with my grandma. So basically, grandma raised me, and after a few years, my mom moved me in with her in her house. And I remember it was a really small house. We would sleep on the floors. I can feel the air from the cracks of the floors. So we weren't rich, and we really didn't have that much money. But nonetheless, my mom did everything she could to provide for her children. But the story goes, I was a very happy child. Like I said, I don't have any regrets of my history from my birth up until I was about 8, 9 years old. I got involved with a bunch of drugs and alcohol at a very young age. I was smoking my first cigarette probably around 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere along there. Just started drinking alcohol about the same age. But I became an alcoholic probably at the age of 12 or 13 years of age. Now, for most of you guys, you've probably heard it, been there, done that, heard plenty of stories based on drugs and alcohol. Well, I'm here to tell you that took a direct impact in my life, and it all started with music. I started listening to a bunch of Ozzy Osbourne, Quiet Riot, a lot of hard metal back in the day. And one of the things that caught my attention the most was Ozzy Osbourne. The name of the album was Speak of the Devil. He had his face with fangs and had blood coming out of his mouth. And I just found it interesting and pretty much liked his music. And so after a year or so, I got into Satanism or devil worship in music, and I listened to Abigail, King Diamond, Slayer, Metallica, and stuff like that. Well, the story along my life is based upon a family that was very loving to me, and I used to question myself, where did I go wrong? How did I end up in prison so many times? And I was loved by my family, but I just didn't know how to love back. I think when it all boils down to it, reading psychological books, psychology books, physiology and stuff of that nature, I started realizing there were patterns in my life that now, as I'm 47 years old, I realized that those patterns had a lot to do with a lot of hatred and a lot of resentment that I had towards my dad, my real dad. Now, my real dad is alive. I do have a relationship with him now. I own a business by the name of J&J Handyman, and I've had a lot of support from my wife to my mom to my Aunt Dora and my Aunt Josie and my Aunt Eva and Erica, all these families. I wish I could name all of them, and I probably could, but I know that you only get so much time on Facebook. So, I mean, on YouTube. So I want to minimize as much as possible, but actually add the best of the stories. So on one of my first chapters, I kind of named it The Beginning, because in the beginning, like I said earlier, I had a loving family. And there are some funny stories in there that, like grandma would wake me up early in the morning and me and the families would debate, now that we're older, who would be woken up first. Well, I always tell everybody that I was the one woken up first because grandma would make me get up since I was the only boy in the house so that I can, use the bathroom and take a shower. Well, I hated taking showers in the morning. It was cold. We had a cold house. Now, we did have a heater and a stove, but when you get up in that shower and it's freaking 40 degrees outside or 30 degrees outside, the worst thing you want to do is take a shower, but she did it to wake us up. But during the time that she wake us up, she was already making tortillas and beans and eggs. So we had a really good family upbringing. We always had food. I found out later down the line, my grandma told me that there were days that they'd go without eating just so that her children could eat, which was us. I never realized how selfish I was until then that, she sacrificed a lot for us. And one thing I will never forget is that woman would wake up at 3, 4 in the morning, start cooking, and she was always reading her Bible. I mean, always. It wasn't one day, even when she was sick with cancer, she read her Bible twice a day, first in the morning for about an hour, 2 hours, and at nighttime she'd start about 8:30, 9, and she'd go till 10, 10:30. So she was a very God-fearing woman. And for that, I am grateful because a lot of those traits were instilled in me at a very young age. Now, my grandpa, Rodolfo Dominguez, he was my dad. He knew everything. He was a handyman. He was a mechanic, something I'm not very good at. But nonetheless, I am a handyman. I'm pretty good at what I do, and I give God the glory for that because if it wasn't for those abilities or those skills or gifts, I would not be able to put them to use, thus making my business where it is today. Like I said, she would wake me up first, and I remember, being that I was raised with a bunch of women, I didn't know that I could pee standing up. I literally would sit down and pee, simply because the lid was always down, and I didn't know that a man could stand up to pee. And of course, once I learned to pee in the snow and write my name. So there you go. I would wrap my head, my arms around the toilet and fall asleep, and I would turn on the water really slowly so that grandma thought I was taking a shower, when in reality, I was really sleeping. The door would go, plop, 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 mijo, wake up, get up. I know you're in there sleeping, so I never could get away with her because she had that third eye and she knew I was asleep. So sure enough, she'd crack open that door and there I was, and boy, she'd place me in that cold toilet. I mean, not toilet, but the bathtub, and it would wake me up, and I'd take my shower, and off to go. Now, Grandma used to get our clothes at the Salvation Army, so we were very limited on some of the clothes that we would be picked out for us. One of them were called rough skins. If you guys that were born in the early 70s, late 60s, there were some pants at the time that were called rough skins, and they had a patch probably 3 inches by 6 inches, and they went over your knees, and they were supposed to keep your blue jeans from tearing. And boy, let me tell you what, after her